Zephaniah or Zephaniah, a Negro Israelite, a son of Cush. Zephaniah means Yahweh hides. Now, Zephaniah's father was named Cushi, and Cushi, as an adjective, that means black. In both Hebrew, it means black, and in Greek, it means black. Now, Cushi is an affectionate term for a Negro of Ethiopian origin, derived from the biblical land of Cush. And it is an area that was alongside the Niger River. And if you actually look at ancient maps in 1736 and ancient maps in 1747 of Africa, you'll find a country called Negro Land and the Kingdom of Judah. This is of utmost importance for us to understand how Yahweh is gathering the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. Because what actually happened is in this Gulf of Guinea in Western Africa, European slave ship holders, they were Ashkenazi slavers. They were of European origin. They were Western Mongols that had infiltrated Britain and mainly Portugal. They were the Ashkenazi slavers. They were wealthy merchant slavers that went down to the coast of Guinea. They employed Mohammedan trappers, Islamics, to go into the kingdom of Judah and Negro land and take the royal house of Judah captive in slave ships, as it's recorded in the book of Deuteronomy, and bring them over to America, and they became known today as what? African Americans. Who is trying to enslave the African Americans more than any people? Democratic socialism, which is why I am a huge supporter of Brexit and Candace Owen and those that are bringing the awareness. Now, Brexit means what? It's African Americans or blacks that are exiting the Democratic Party because they've been awakened to see that the Democratic Party are the biggest slavers and always have been in the USA. So Candace Owens is doing an amazing job with Brexit, blacks exiting the Democratic Party, realizing that, of course, democratic socialism is, of course, all part of this globalist agenda of what we need to expose. So, all that to say this, Zephaniah, of course, a Negro Israelite, more complex than what Bible scholars would just like to rush through because it is not politically expedient to them today. We're going to see, of course, this area of which Zephaniah, this area, of course, of which we're talking about, Negro land and the kingdom of Judah. If you were to look at an African map today, the kingdom of Judah right on the Gulf of Guinea appears today in the present day Republic of Benin and the nation of Togo. So if you look on a map today at the nation of Togo and the present Republic of Benin, that is where the kingdom of Judah and Negro land was. So this is very important to our history as Israel. And many will go, well, you can't say the word Negro. I find that so offensive. I just think that that's culturally insensitive, Matthew. I'm talking biblical anthropology. Grow up, snowflake. You are not special. You are not beautiful. You are not a unique snowflake. You are the same decaying organic matter as everything else. Give me a break. People today are whitewashed walls, are they not? Literally snowflakes. Cush is one of the sons of Ham, who is the son of Noah. Now, Cush, therefore, is Noah's grandson. The territory named after Cush is called the land of Cush, and it's actually found in Genesis chapter 2, verse 13, where the word Cush is listed as Aethiopias, or Ethiopia in the Septuagint, the LXX, which is the same word, Cush, that's used in other verses in the Bible. You can find it in Isaiah 11:11, and it comes across as Aethiopias in the Septuagint, Isaiah 45, verse 15, Ethiopian, and of course, we just studied it, Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 7, Ethiopian. So what we're talking about here is Negro as a anthropological biblical term, because I want to expose democratic socialism and slavery as it was then, so it is today, which is why I'm a big supporter of Candace Owens and Blexit, blacks exiting the Democratic Party. It's good for Israel. It's good for you, and it's good for the prophecies of the Bible, because Yahweh says that he will gather all 12 tribes, and the Ashkenazi are not one of them. Okay? But those taken captive from Negro land along the river Niger in the area that I've just located, that's very important that we understand what we're talking about. So, for Zephaniah's father to be named Cushi means that he was black, Negro, African, a regal Negro from Negro land or the kingdom of Judah. We have ourselves here an amazing black prophet anointed to warn Yahweh's people about his wrath on them for their sin. And of course, this black-skinned prophet is part of the lineage of Messiah. Now, Zephaniah's father was Cushi. His grandfather was, it says right there, Gedaliah. And Gedaliah, his great-grandfather, was Amariah. And Hezekiah the king was his great-great-grandfather. So the dark-skinned Negro trait is woven into what? Into the genealogy, because Hezekiah is one of the kings in the genealogy of Yahusha in Matthew chapter 1. Now, no funky monks would have been preaching this to you, and you're not going to hear this in your local Baptist church, because they want to keep you down and enslaved, regardless of the color of your skin. But Yahweh says that we are Joseph's coat, a multicolored ethnic group that is being taken out of the nations, regardless, because the ones that want to enslave us are not particularly caring what color our skin is. They are the globalists, and they are Ashkenazi slavers in their origin, and they will employ the Mohammedan to do their dirty work, just as they did in the 1700s they are doing today, which is why it is so important when you get blacks raising up like Candace Owens, waking up and making a stand, and why Blexit is so important in this country. So important. Anyway, let's continue on. We have the regal Negro connection to the house of Judah and Yahusha himself. Now, we know King Hezekiah had more interaction with Africa than any other king of Judah. Hezekiah married an African woman who then gave birth to Zedekiah's grandfather. So, to find a Negro as one of the minor prophets and of regal status means that black Africans have contributed what? Hugely to the total development of ancient Israel in a way that modern history does not want to admit. Because modern history is fabricated history. It is not historical truth. And we have to look at historical truth. So democratic socialists are enemies of Israel, always have been, always will be, the biggest slavers, of course. Zephaniah was thus of royal descent, a regal Negro. He lived in Jerusalem, since he describes Jerusalem in quite some detail, as we'll see in this opening chapter. This prophetic book, of course, bears his name. He mentions the fish gate and the second quarter in verse 10 of chapter 1. So the prophetic mantle that is upon this prophet spanned the reign of King Josiah in 640 to 609 before the Common Era. This is the last voice of a prophet. Think about it. The last voice of a prophet that Israel had heard was the voice of the prophet Isaiah in 701 before this guy came along. So they were really ready to hear some prophetic news. It just so happened that it wasn't feel-good news. And you and I, we need to hear some prophetic news. And it's not necessarily going to make you feel all warm and cozy, but that's not my job. That's not the job of the words of Yahweh. The job of the words of Yahweh are to wake you up, backslider. But who else are the real Shemites? There are other anti-Zionist, non-Ashkenazi, Torah-keeping Jews worldwide that are the true Shemites. Just like the Yemenite Jews and the black African Shemites. And I most probably shouldn't go here, but I will anyway. You see, after the destruction of the temple, yes, many of the Jews, the poor Jews, remained in the land. But there was a migration as well of the more affluent Jews to Yemen and to other parts of Africa. Other parts of Africa. You see, the black African Shemites were actually then taken away in slave ships. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. And who were the owners of these slave ships? Who were the biggest slavers in the 16th century? The Ashkenazi were the biggest slavers in the 16th and 17th century, going into the 18th century. You see, Ashkenazi slaving was huge. This is from, I have to be careful when I say this, so my sources, it's always best to go with Jewish sources, right? Because you just trod on a bunch of toes. So we'll go with the Jewish sources. There's a ton of sources out there, but I'll stick with the Jewish ones because that's just safer. The Jewish scholar Jonathan Shorshak says this: Jewish merchants routinely possessed enormous numbers of slaves temporarily before selling them off. If a slave auction fell on a Jewish festival, it was postponed due to lack of buyers and sellers. The Jews of Suriname gave their slave plantations Hebrew names such as Machanaim, Nachamu, and Goshen. Rabbi Herbert Bloom adds that the slave trade was one of the most important Jewish activities. In 1694, Jews owned 9,000 African Shemites. Jewish slaving is in fact confirmed by the Jewish Encyclopedia. So in the days that we live, there's nothing more important than this Melchizedek message to the true Shemites. Because this Melchizedek message of the true Shemites is the solution. It is the solution to the Palestinian problem. It is the solution to the Black Lives Matter that is being fomented by the synagogue of Satan. It is the solution to racial tensions, segregation that is all part of the synagogue of Satan's plot for Yahweh's people to fight amongst themselves based upon the color of our skin. That is ridiculous. But that is what they want, so that we keep our minds off of them as the true slavers of Yahweh's people. When we all realize who's behind this racial and political fermentation, the synagogue of Satan, and when we join the priesthood together as Joseph's coat, we're victorious. Then we're victorious over the New World Order slavers, their Luciferic, Levitical perversion. You see, they're obsessed with blood. They're obsessed with their own blood, and they're obsessed with your blood. But they're not obsessed with Yahushua's blood.